scale was the black keys themselves. Sounds a little Chinese. And that's called the pentatonic scale, named after Pythagoras, who invented the number 5. What happened is there was this big, see this big crack in the middle there, this big distance. And what happened is different religious organizations and different sects and different people in different nations used to land in that crack in slightly different places. Some would just come a half step off, some would come a whole step off of it, some would be in between. But most everybody all over the world had more or less agreed on those 5 notes for almost 1,000 years. They had agreed on those 5 notes. And debates for hundreds of years at a time developed over where should we land when we sing in here. As a matter of fact, the distance there is called minor third. They're both minor thirds. And you have essentially 3 half steps in there that you could land on in between those places. And so different schools of music landed in different places and their scales were not compatible. And it wasn't until about the late 1600s, the beginning of the 17th century, that people began to agree on which notes to land on in there, and finally arrived at the diatonic scale. And that is why all the white notes on the piano naturally play that scale. Also, the music writing system that we have developed here with the lines and flats, with the lines and spaces, also developed at around that period of time. And it tried in some way or another to reflect the C scale or the diatonic scale or all the white notes. As the black notes started getting invented and shoved in there, they didn't change this basic graph arrangement. This basic graphing arrangement stayed the same and did not reflect the half steps and some of the little missing parts that are in there. It still more or less is some loose attempt at giving you the diatonic scale in white notes. These are all white notes. So when there is no sharps or flats, there's no key signature at all, as this music is. Back here you have this thing called a clef. And all that is it's a fancy way of writing the letter G in Old English Gothic. And so it tells you essentially where the letter G is on the staff. But that G is not 1. G is 5. And tells you the timing, meter. You're going to count up to 4, and then you're going to count over again. 4, and then you're going to count over again to 4, and you're going to count over again to 4. And by doing it in those little micro counts, it's easier to keep it together than counting up to 175. This song is 175 beats long. You try counting it out, you go bananas. You won't do it. So you break it down into smaller counts. Okay? When there's no sharps or flats over here, this whole music staff in some way or another is trying to reflect the white keys on the piano. Now on that little instrument there, the number 1 corresponds to the number 1 or the first step, do, of this scale. And then re happens to be the number 2, mi is 3, 4, fa, sol, la, ti 7, and then do 8. And 8 equals 1. Now you'll notice the keyboard goes up. It says 9, and then it has the function keys. But if you push one of those little buttons, you'll notice that what comes up on the little display is the numbers I just told you. And if you push the number 8, what will happen is the number 1 will appear on the display, like this, with a little minus sign at the top, meaning that you're an octave above the do, re, mi octave that you just played. And if you go from that 1 the other way, what you'll start getting is 7, 6 with a minus at the bottom. And the minus at the bottom means you've gone, you're in the bottom octave. So the only numbers that thing will punch out are the numbers 1 through 7. And it repeats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with the minus on the top to show you've gone up an octave. And going backwards, it shows the minus on the bottom. You only get the numbers 1 through 7 on there. Now if you try any of the black keys, what will happen is you will get a number like 1 sharp or 2 sharp. You will not get any flats. They won't ever use the flat symbol. And what that's doing is, that's always relating again to these numbers that I've been teaching you to read by. This is telling you what octave they're in, and if there's a sharp in it, it tells you that instead of going for that note, you go a half a step higher, either to the black key, or if you're going to go to a black key normally, you go to the white key above that, just right next to it. You just stretch one fret further on your guitar, or you go a half a hole on your flute. But whatever the instrument is, usually they have some way in which you can do a half of a step rather than a full one. And so what you do is you normally go for that number. If the number you're looking for is a number 5, but it's got a sharp on it, and you go for 5 and go up a half step above that. And you never have to think flat, really. And there's no reason really to have to learn to read and write music in any but the key of C. And modern composers who are doing what we call atonal music, or dodecaphonic music, music written in all 12 keys simultaneously, the only way they're able to pull off that feat is they don't write them in any key except the key of C. So more and more modern composers are going away from writing their music in other keys and using all the sharps and flats, and are getting more and more into just always writing everything in the key of C. So these member patterns that you're learning would hold up for even the most modern of music, where they don't have sharps and flats. Now if they have sharps and flats, this whole thing shifts a little. I'll explain that. But basically stays the same. Now if you just take and put that guy in programming mode, which is a record mode, and then you punch in the numbers that you put over the melodies, what should happen is you can see them come up on the display to make sure your number is correct. And then you can punch in or program in all of the numbers. You do that by putting that button in the record mode. And then what you do is there's a button here called, see, MLC. MLC. You see that there? MLC. That's memory clear. What you have to do is clear the old music. See it there? You have to clear the old music that was programmed into it out of there, so you can start programming in new music.
Is it flash on the white side?
Yeah, that's cool. Right, that's right. Okay, now let's take, like Mary Had a Little Lamb. What number does Mary Have a Little Lamb start on? The number 3. So that what you do is just push the button 3. And you should see it on the display, the number 3, right? Okay, now the next note is the number 2. So just put that in. And the next note's the number 1. And then the number 2. And then 3, 3, and 3 again. Well, let's just put that much in at the moment, okay? Now, if you made a mistake at that point, let's say you had hit the number 6. Go ahead, hit the numbers. Okay, now we got one wrong note in there, right? So what you can do is, there's a little button right next to the red button called DEL. Delete. You push delete, you see it goes, and it goes back 1. So we'll remove, all you have to do is, if you put in a whole bunch of numbers, and you listen to it, and one's wrong, I'll show you in a minute how you can search through, looking at the numbers on the display, and make sure the numbers on the display match the numbers over your notes, and when you see one that's wrong, it just comes up to the display, push delete, and it's gone. You can also insert at that moment. You can put in another note, but you can't do it in rhythm. You'll hear a little beep go off, and it's inserting a note. Now, if you push the on button over to play, over to the play mode, you'll notice there are 2 blue buttons with white circles in the middle of them that say touch pads. Those are like drum touch pads. And if you touch them, what they will do is they will tap out, if you tap out the rhythm there, they'll play the notes in sequence that you just put in there. And since everything here is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, all you have to do is tap those buttons. 1, da, 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 1, 2, and out should come Mary Had a Little Lamb. Try it. Right? Did you get it? Got Mary Had a Little Lamb. Push reset. Push the red button. Okay, now just tap. Da, 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 da. Oh, push one at a time. See, you're pushing both at once. Try it. Yeah. Okay, and you can tap between them like this if you want, or just tap one of them. Tap both. I use 2 fingers when I do it because you'll see another thing that those things do is they let you do what we call phrasing, which no other computer, no matter how expensive it is, this thing has more musical capability than the others. Because what you can do is if you just tap that button very quickly, it stores it as a short note. And if you hold the button down, it stores it as a long note. Remember, we were talking about long and short notes for emphasizing things, phrasing. So you have the ability to put touch into this, which none of the others have. The others just play the note for a certain duration. You can change the duty cycle on this and play any kind of staccato or any kind of legato note that you want and add some very nice touch expression to it. Now what happens is if you go back into the record mode and hit the reset button and then tap it out, what you tap out then gets recorded as the rhythm. And the rhythm becomes recorded at that moment. Then by hitting the play button, the one on the very end, it will play back what you played with the rhythm that you touched into it. So try hitting your red button and tapping out Mary Had a Little Lamb again in rhythm. Yes, put it in the record. Now just push the play button and it'll play it back just the way you did it. Oh yeah, you have to put it in the record. See, it's playing it back now, just the way you programmed it in there. In other words, that thing reprograms the rhythm without changing the notes, the number of the note. Okay? Now the next question is, inside of those little things is a little rhythm machine. And the little rhythm machine can tick out a little rhythm for you, and then you can play along with the rhythm, the touchpad, making the music rhythm that you're reprogramming match the drum inside. So that if you speed the drum up or slow the drum down, what will happen is your music melody will speed up and slow down with the drum. So you can synchronize your music to the rhythm machine in there at any speed that you want. All you have to do is start a rhythm, and you'll see right next to where it says rhythm, it says tempo, and it has a little up arrow and a little down arrow. If your rhythm's going too fast for you to cope with, you just push a little down arrow and it'll slow the rhythm down till the rhythm's going at some speed where you can cope with it. Then all you have to do is in the record mode, start the rhythm, and in this case it's going to be something that's in 4/4. So I think there's a rhythm on there that says 4-beat. And you'll find the rock 1 and rock 2 are also 4-beat. So you can use any of those rhythms. And what you can do is start the rhythm and then play along with it the touchpads. And what you'll be doing is synchronizing the melody in there to the rhythm box. And then you can play them both back together at any time. Try it. Try to putzing around.
Leave it on record.
Yeah, leave it on record. Do the rhythm. Touch one of these rhythms. Is that too fast or too slow? If you want to speed it up, push the up arrow. Then you can just, you get to the speed one. Now, C. Did you get it? Figure it out? Okay, what I'd like you to do now is put the whole melody, put all of Mary Had a Little Lamb into that machine. You can go back into record mode, clear the memory, and then tap in all the numbers for Mary Had a Little Lamb. And then in the record mode, along with the rhythm, program it to go along and try it.
I'm not sure about the line on this melody.
Sure. Here, I'll help you, Bob. No, that's 3. That's the number 3. Yes, that line is 3. Bottom line, the key of C. So that's 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 3, 5. So you jump from line to line to line. 3, 5, 5. Because 5, the next space would be 4, and that would be 1. 3, 4, 5. And whenever it jumps from a space to a space or 1 to 1, it's a number. So that's 3, it's jumping to 5. And the next one is 7. That just helps you. Okay, remember the odd rule helps pretty fast. The odd rule helps a lot. So, try the rest. Now it starts on 1. Yeah. You did it. Oh, done. You got the whole melody, right?
Yeah, I got that. The other part.
Well, look. As long as you're able to read by number and program in that one key, the key of C. Now, what I'm going to show you is how to read in any other key and still play in the key of C. So what you'll be able to do is transpose, and then you see something. Just teach everybody to sing in the key of C. What happens is after you get good at this, what I did, give you an example. On the flute, when I first wanted to learn the metal flute, okay, I grabbed the metal flute and I learned to play the key of C, which is a very simple key on the flute. I grabbed one of these 100, as a matter of fact, it was this one. I don't know why they call this 100 greatest hits. It's 100 most boring melodies. And so I took 100 most boring melodies, and in one afternoon, I played through this entire book, regardless of what key it was in, by numbers. I read everything and played it in the key of C. So by the end of the day, I had played 100 melodies on my flute, and I knew how to read by number. By the end of the day, in one day. Then what I did is, for about a week, I walked around playing by ear. Just playing melodies. I'd walk up to somebody, I'd say, think of a song. And they'd say, Yellow Submarine. And I'd start, da 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 da. And everywhere I made a mistake, I memorized the numbers, the 2 numbers. Because I figured if I could pick the rest out by ear, I'd be able to do that again. The part I couldn't pick out by ear was the part that obviously I was having a problem with. So all I did is, for instance, in Yellow Submarine, I had to remember at one point it goes 4, 4, 4, 4, 6. And once I got that together, that's all I had to remember about Yellow Submarine. I could play it on any musical instrument I came up against, and every time I came to that point where I was about to stumble, well, I remembered the numbers, so I could be conscious, and then go right back to giving myself up to my ear, see? Then what I did is, after 1 week of improvising and being able to play by ear everything in the key of C, 1 week I sat down and learned the key of D. I learned to play in the key of D on the flute. And that night, after I'd practiced the scale and exercises all day, that evening, I sat down with the 100 most boring tunes, and I played through the entire book again, by number, in the key of D. The following week, I did the same thing with the key of E. The following week, I did the same thing. And in 12 weeks, I learned to play all 12 scales, all 12 keys, and it mastered the flute in just 12 weeks. Had it down. So you can do essentially the same thing on almost any musical instrument. You can conquer a musical instrument in months if you go at it in a very organized way. And if you use this real simple method, you'll find that conquer one key, learn to jam in it real easily. Whatever key it is, I don't care how fit your hand on the guitar. If you've got a small hand, then play on the high frets. If you've got a bigger hand, play on the lower frets. Just find a place that fits your hand. Just find a key that you like, that's comfortable. I happen to like the key of E flat on the piano because I'm scientific and it's the most, starting with the third finger, is the most symmetrical scale. And with both hands, it does, your hands do exactly the opposite things with each other as you go in both directions. So I like that. That symmetry is so easy that I play a lot in the key of E flat, which is a very unusual key on the piano.
I think that was the key, the thing that I was doing earlier, and I think that was the flat.
Are you saying just for any particular musical instrument, you start C, C major scale?
Yeah, well, you'll find certain instruments are easier in certain keys. For instance, a B flat trumpet, it's actually easier to play in the key of B flat because its key of B flat would be synonymous to the key of C being on all the white keys, not having to think of sharps and flats. So the ballad patterns would work out in such a way that you would essentially be playing the C scale on that instrument. It would be the simplest ballad pattern. If you're playing an E flat saxophone, playing the E flat scale is equivalent to its C. It's the simplest fingering pattern. I have a D flute. So if I play in the key of D, that's the simplest fingering pattern.
What you're talking about
Major scale, you'll find do, re, mi.
what about other types of scales?
They're all in that. They're all in that scale. I'm going to get to that later tonight. What I'm going to show you is from the do, re, mi scale, you can invent or find or discover any other scale that's ever been written.
By starting on a different white key.
Exactly. They're called modes. As a matter of fact, if you start on 6 and play up until 6, you'll have the minor mode on the key of C, which in this case would be A minor. A minor is just C from 6 to 6.
What mode is it?
That is C major. Those are all in
How
C
do I know
major.
that? By the fourth one?
By the fact that there's nothing, no sharps or flats in the keys.
And how do you know if it's not A minor?
It doesn't matter. If you want to play something in A minor, still write the numbers as if they were in major and play them. And it will come out in minor.
How do you tell the difference between whether a song is on, if you're using on the white keys, whether it's C major or...
Oh, good question. The way you can tell what key a piece is in, or whether it's a major or a minor, is by looking at the last note. The last note of the piece of music usually is the focal point on which the whole thing spins around.
So you can't really tell till the end of the song.
The last note of the song is the key. If it ends on an A, it's an A something. It might be an A minor, it might be A major, it might be C minor. Because A can be all three of those.
So
But
you
it's
can't
A.
tell unless you hear the whole song to the end.
That's right, because, well, see, composers down through the years have used tricks to fool your ear. Now, sometimes the first, no, I can't say that. The first note of the song is either 1, 3, or 5, or if it's in minor, it's 6 or 3. And you won't know until you get to the end of the song. So, but what you can do with written music is look at the last note of any of those pieces. What does it end on? 1. Doesn't it? And the whole point of music is to start a little distance from home, move away from home, move back towards home, away from home, back towards home, away from home, back towards home, fake people out, come back in, and eventually you land on home. You're back at home. So the last note of the piece, quite often, is the key. But in modern music, that's not necessarily true because now a lot of composers and jazz musicians in particular like what we call suspension.
Yeah, what if they fade
And
out?
what they do is they'll play a suspended chord. In that suspended chord will be the home note, the home key. But they'll play other notes around it, clusters around it to give it the feeling as if it hasn't ended yet. And if the piece feels as if it hasn't ended, it's because it hasn't gone home. So the last note is probably not.
So like a lot of songs end repeating over and over and fade out. So there's really no way of knowing.
Well, usually within the chord progression, they're always starting at one, coming around, coming back. I'm going to play some Why Do I Want to Call Him Cat Stevens. I'm going to play some Jethro Tull. I guess it's because he has a beard and he's in the woods. Reminds me of a cat. Jethro Tull. I'm going to play a little piece of Jethro Tull for you. One thing I wanted to do though now, can you see how this works? And can you see that you can get a melody into these little things? And these little devices will help you if you are a singer, for instance, that cannot play the piano. This has at least 300 notes. And you can put most of Leonard Bernstein, or I put Leonard Bernstein's Maria Tonight in all three of those this week and played the whole thing, you know. The whole piece. I took each one of those and I first just took the melody and wrote the numbers and typed it in. Then I looked at the harmony that he wrote and, you know, followed one of the harmonic lines. Actually, I did the bass line second. I followed the bottom note, put that in on another one of those, and then I just chose which notes I wanted in the middle for harmony. Put 3 lines of Leonard Bernstein's music into 3 of those differently, synchronized them all to the same rhythm pattern. I just chose one of them to put the rhythm on, and then always played its rhythm and tapped out the part on the other one. And then what happened is, I could start a rhythm and hit all 3 play buttons at the same time and kick back and listen to the Leonard Bernstein piece. And what happened is last night I had a student come by who's got a beautiful voice, Muriel, and she really wants to learn Leonard Bernstein. So I had this piece in there, and I just pushed all 3 buttons, and you should have seen her eyes go wide when she heard the music come out. And I said, let's sing. And she and I sang along with these little calculators with full orchestration, you know. So she works on some pieces which she wants to learn to play the piano. You want to learn to play the guitar. You want to learn to get something together, but you want to sing it right away. You want to sing it right now. Well, with a little instrument like this, you can at least program in the melody, play the melody, and sing along with it right away. And you can see it's no problem to program. And what you have to do is learn to take the same approach to yourself and learning how to play an instrument. Figure out how you can get yourself to think in these ways. And you'll notice that what it does is when it puts in numbers, it does not think rhythm. And then once it's got the numbers down, you can work on the rhythm, right? Or you could tap out the rhythm and then put the numbers to it. And I suggest when you learn to read music, you do either of that. If you can play a scale very easily on your axe right now, then get music that you know the rhythm to, and start playing those melodies by thinking the numbers. Because then you don't have to concentrate on the rhythm. And if you get a piece you've never played before, then sit down and work out the rhythm with the code words and clap your way through it first until the rhythm is real easy, and then you can concentrate on the numbers, the scale, and get it down. Okay, another thing about those pieces. Can anyone see the song form? Did anyone notice? What kind of a song is that? A, B, A, B. Yes. La da 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 da. Actually, it could be AA. There's a small A and a B tied together to make one larger sentence. Da 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 da. They're tied together like rhyme scheme. Then da 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 dee 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 dee. There's a variation on the last part. But basically, that piece is just AA. Just AA. What about the next piece? Da 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 da. Yeah, that one is AB. Definitely AB. La 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 da 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 da. Two measures of a whole poem they're using as a rhyme scheme in the rhythm. La 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 la. Da 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 da. Also, you'll notice it uses code words. One, one, number one, number one. Harmony, 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 harmony. I like that part. Number one, two.
When you're saying A, B, what do you mean by that?
I make a sentence or a concept or what sounds to you like the beginning and the end of something musically. And you can apply that concept of A-B-ness to anything. Just the harmony, just the melody, or just the rhythm.
No, but A, B, is that the state?
What is it? If I go la 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 la, doesn't it break right there? Sounds like somebody put a comma. Can I stop it anywhere in between? La 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 la. Sounds like it wants to go on. La 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 la. Da. Right there I put a comma. So wherever the beginning of something and the end of some unit of feeling, it's like I can only equate it to a sentence. If you have a compound sentence, you'll have commas. The comma is that point in which you can stop and take a breath. In music, as I explained with the rhythms, we call that a half cadence, wherever there's a comma. If the line seems to stop and have to take a breath before it goes on, that comma, we call that a half cadence, or partial cadence. There are other kinds of cadences that are smaller than half. But then a full cadence is when the line seems to come to an end, a period. And in voice, that's always announced by the voice dropping. The voice drops at the end of the sentence. At the end of the sentence. We go. Instead of if it was an exclamation or a question, we go up with our voice. So we've been trained that when we hear a comma or a question or a period is coming up. And so in music, whenever you have that feeling of period, that's the end of a phrase. And the phrase might be a compounded phrase. It might have commas in there. And that's what, this is where I call the long line or the macrocosmos. You want to get out of yourself. You want to get back away from the code words and get away from this thing and sense it as the whole unit as some small little thing, some little package that comes in to break it down. And once you start perceiving music that way, your life will never be the same. You will start hearing that and seeing that in a lot of things, and that is the secret to writing music. The secret to writing music is just make up your mind what song form you want to use and stuff anything in there. It'll work.
Okay, but I'm not sure on the A, B, and the AA. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, right.
The comma means that you're going to stop and you're going to go to something.
Yeah, how does it sound? Like if I go up, da 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 da. See that part right there? Da 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 da. Seems to rhyme with the front half of the other. So I'm obviously starting that over again. Da 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 is different. Da 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 da. That's like the first thing again, isn't it? What that is A, B, A. Da 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 da. That's an A. Da 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 da. A. And if you look at the notes and you look at the number patterns, you can tell because the number patterns repeat. 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3. Over here on that line, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 2, 2. That's 2, 2. And then instead of going up and coming down, here they just went up and stayed. And here on row, 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 gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream, nothing repeats. And this seems to be one thing, and that seems to be something else. So you can call this an A thing, and that's a B thing.
So you're just saying you divide these and you call them A or B?
Yeah.
You have to arbitrarily...
Yes, yes, you call it X or Y.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know you were
Okay.
hung up on that, but you can call it anything you want.
Okay.
You can call it first theme, second theme. You know, first idea, second idea. Look at Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. You see here, 1, 1, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5. If you look at the second stanza there, it is not the same. If you look at the third stanza, note for note, it's identical. So it's an A, B, A song. A, B, A. And as I was telling you, this one's big in architecture and used a lot. Like the front of the building. It's used a lot. Okay, so you've got an AA song, you've got an AB song there, you've got an ABA song. Okay, you've got those three song forms. Start listening for song form, because it will help you organize your thoughts and make certain things obvious. I mean, you can't do too much because it won't fit in there.
So when you're singing, you have this section, do you have more than, say, AA or B, C?
Usually not too often. As a matter of fact, what I do in teaching people how to sing and teaching them a musical instrument is what I call condensation. See if I can. Oh dear. I have I'm sorry to be boring. Okay. Here's a piece of music called Fame. It's on TV a lot. We all hear it. Here's the whole thing. See how big it is? It goes on. It's about a 2.5-minute song. Okay. Let's put this down here. Here is my condensation of it. That is the whole song. Right there. That's the whole thing. That is that whole song. Now, in this song, it starts out with an A theme. Actually, it starts out with an introduction. These 4 bars here at the top are the whole introduction to this song. Da 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 dee da da ba da. Then it goes into the refrain, which is this part down here. Baby, look at me and tell me what you see. Da da dee da 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 dee da da dee da 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 dee da. That's the A theme. So that's just from here to there. And now what happens is da da dee da 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 dee da da dee da 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 dee da da. It goes again. Da 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 ya da 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 da. Little 1 measure transition. Da 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 ya da 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 ba. That's just those 4 measures. Ya da 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 dee dum. Ya da 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 dum ba. Ya da da live forever. Da da dee dee da da dum bum. This 4 measures goes on from here all the way over to there, and then repeats. Most of this piece of music, about 1/2 of it, is that 4 bars. This 8 bars here is repeated twice, and then you have a 4-bar intro. So you see that whole 2.5-minute piece of music can be condensed to about 10 bars of music. And not only that, I can take the rhythms that are in there, as I was showing you, and break them down into something simpler, which has the same feeling as that. For instance, that thing goes, like that. Okay, now that can be broken down into something as half the notes that time. Took out all the syncopation, just played it blum, 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 blum. See, a lot of times while you're doing the music, you're shaking between a fistful of notes. Yada da 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 da. So all you have to play is da 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 da. And all the shaking is just a matter of going back and forth. So you just have to learn to touch the notes. So what I can do is, what I'm doing for Muriel, this is what's opening up her voice. She used to get so caught up in all that music writing, trying to read all those notes, she couldn't sing. So I gave her my condensation. She went home, and at the keyboard in the hour that we were here, she learned to play through that whole thing. At home in 1 week, she learned to jam on it and start bending the rhythms and adding more notes and shaking out other things. When she came back here, she was not only able to almost play this whole piece of music pretty well, but she was able to jam on it, which is something she'd never been able to do before. And she was able to sing along with it and enjoy herself. I enjoyed myself. We had fun. So, a lot of, by understanding the song form, you can then learn, instead of playing the, just learn this part, just learn that part, and then you know this part. Or in this case, just learn that, and you know that. You got half the song down.
Do the song forms correspond to the chord structure?
A lot of times. As a matter of fact, the song form could be the chord structure. And what I like to do is just play this, right? I'll play this record for you, listen to it, and I'll clue you right away. It's one of the three. It's either AA, AB, or ABA. And what Paul does with it is rather subtle, so you have to listen. But I think you'll hear the musical sentences, and once you hear the song form, you'll realize he sticks to the song form throughout the whole piece. Makes a few changes. Let's see. I'll catch the right one. several times, sang B several times, and then had the band jam on A and modulate. And then if the band would shift up, and come right back in on him so it mounts him. So what you just heard is what I mean by song form. Now, in the first three measures of that piece of music, I already knew 2/3 of the music. And then he announced the B theme. Once I heard the B theme, that was it. I now knew the whole piece of music. If I want to learn to play that piece of music, all I have to do is practice the A theme and practice playing the B theme and play the A theme over 4 times, play the B theme 4 times, play a variation on the A theme and modulate it or change it, and then come right back again. But that was it. And I'm willing to bet you he had that idea in mind before he wrote the song. And they decided the band would jam on the A. As a matter of fact, this is quite common. You'll also see a lot of times, the other one I told you about is A-A-B-A. And what will happen is, the B part will actually be for the band jam. They always stick a band jam in there somewhere. And the singer will sing his thing, and then this will be the band jam or the chorus. The thing you want to sock at people, and then they'll play this. But you see, within that song form, you can also lay out a little bit of orchestration and just decide these guys are going to sing this, and then I'm going to sing this, and then these guys will jam on what I sang first. They do their jam, and then I come in and do my thing again. This is why song form helps.
Is that AAB or AABA?
That's AABA.
With the jam?
AAB, band jam A, going back.
The last A is that,
No. That's from the last one I showed you. You'll see this. We have the AABA.
It says band jam chorus.
Or chorus, yes.
Or
Or chorus.
maybe also.
But it's not that literal. I'm quoting this literally. You'll find a lot of things fit that structure, but what's interesting in life is when they don't. What's interesting is they'll follow this larger structure, but they'll make little nuances of change in here somewhere. That'll be different. What he did is he used an A-B-A. He had the band jam on A. The change that he made that I find interesting is he had the band jam A twice, but he raised it up in pitch. And then he did it again. The first time they did it, he raised it up in pitch once, and then he came back in singing. The second time, he let the band jam longer, and they raised it up in pitch, I think, 3 times, and then did a whole other riff off of that. And then he came back in and did the thing, and then they raised it up twice and ended. So what he did is he fooled around with the band jam A theme. That's all. And with that little variation, it made it interesting. But it was still song form, and it still fit song form, basic song form. Now what you'll find is if you get some old country western music, which isn't my favorite music, but folk music from all over the world, which is common people, songs and melodies that common people have put together and added words to over the ages, almost very strictly follow these song forms. Since they are things that are kind of put together by communities of people and are passed on through cultures, what happens is the extraterraneous stuff gets carved off, and it gets right down to the bare bones. And if you listen to a lot of old country westerns or you listen to ballads, you'll hear these song forms real stark. Rock music is based on the ballad, and any 4/4 rock music will use one of these song forms. Try to listen for the song form. Because the first thing I do when someone comes in here and hands me a tape and says, I've got a jam with this band tomorrow, and I've got to figure out a saxophone part for this thing. And here's a tape of the band jamming. I want you to write me a part or write the music for me. I have to transcribe. They want me to transcribe. So what I'll do is, the first time I listen to the tape, I will put my mind in song form mode. And the only thing I will listen for is the song form. And and I write out the song form. Then I rewind the tape, and I play the tape through again, and I say, okay, this time what I'm going to listen for is the bass line. And I'm going to try to figure out the rhythm of the bass line. So I'll hear the bass going, I'll write that out. And then I'll figure out where he changes. And by watching where the bass guitar changes, I'll get the chord structure, usually, because the bass guitar bounces around, usually bouncing off of one a lot in the chord structure, what they call figured bass. And by working out the figured bass, I get my chord changes and my basic bass line, and I've got my song form already. So now all I have to do is lace in the melody, which I can hear, and splash in some harmony. So by listening to a tape 4 times in a row, and each time I listen to it, I decide what I'm going to listen for, and just focus on that, I can transcribe a piece of music, get it written out. Sometimes it's tougher than that, but that's nice practice. You can listen to a song that you've heard before, but listen to it with the intent of hearing the song form. Then the next time through, listen to the bass guitar and see if the bass guitar, the chords change with the song form. You'll see that one of the reasons for using song form is to tell where the chords are going to change. Or what kind of, this would be one chord progression, which is repeated. This will be a different chord progression here. Whereas the Beatles do a lot, they'll be going along in 4/4, and then they'll throw in a different meter here. Or they'll have something where it's 4/4/3, 4/4/3, and then here it'll be 4/4/3, 6/8, 9/8, something, and then go back to 4/4/3, 4/4/3, where they change the meter. And they just throw in a little nuance of a surprise here or there. Okay, so
You're talking about when you phrase that, I was sort of confused. You're saying there is a chord progression before you say it. Song form, so you shouldn't try to different one.
oh, thank you. Let me stop myself. Yeah, for instance, let's say that I decide that I want this thing, like he was doing, his A theme was about 4 measures long, and then he repeated it again to get 8 measures out of this whole section. And let's say I just say I want 4 measures with chord change here. And I'm going to start on my 1 chord. Let's say move to my 4 chord, then change to my 5 chord, and come back to my 1 chord. And we'll call that chord change there, the A theme. So I have to repeat that again. And then here what I might do is 1, 5, oh no, let's do 1, 1, 4, 1, 4. Something like that. So this is a different chord change. And then what would happen is over here, I can go back to this guy. 1, 4, 5, 1. In other words, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Do that again. Now change. Now go back. So they could be the chord changes make the beat. You could organize the whole chord progression around a song form, and it will make sense. This is the way you write songs. Crank them out.
Would it be 1, 2, 1?
In that case, I've got it 1, 4, 1, 4. But you could hear what happened when I played it. You could tell when the B theme came along, and then suddenly it changed back to the A theme. I could have done something a little more artful, but I was just blocking out something. What I mean by all this stuff, I'll explain a little bit later on when we get into tonight. Okay, so that's Jethro Tull song form. You can see how we can read by number and plug it into your little computers so we can begin to see. You can see how the music I gave you has song form. So all this stuff I've talked about for the last few weeks isn't all that mysterious. It's a lot easier to do than it is to talk about. I want to get into some more about melody now and really show you what else, how this can be extended from melody into harmony. Now, the next problem is we've been dealing with this. We said is the key of C. Whenever it looks like this. The next thing that happens after you've learned to read, use the odd and even rules to get your numbers together and figure out where everything's at. 1, 1. Who's got the 1? Okay. The way keys work is whenever you're adding sharps into a key, the sharps are always added in an exact pattern all the time. And whenever they add sharps, the first sharp that they always put in is what's called F sharp. It's usually put on this line, except Bartok sometimes would put it down here. It didn't matter, it's still the name is F. All that does is, wherever you find a sharp, the sharp is the number 7, because sharps are added in sevenths. The 7th step of the scale is a forbidden thing, and so when we change keys, we add something to sharpen the forbidden thing, the 7th step. So if that sharp is telling you that this line is 7, then where's 1 got to be at? Right above it, that's 1. I'm then working backwards, 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, here's 1. So when we have 1 sharp, which is the number 7, it's telling us that this line here, you see, which this clef is built around, the G clef is around, is where 1 is, and therefore the name of this key is the key of G. Because 1 lands on the name, G. So it's the key of G. Now, what if I go sticking a couple sharps in there? What if I stick, after I put in this one, what if I put in one right here on this space? If I put one on this space, the last sharp, which is this sharp, not that one, this one, is always the number 7. So where's 1? Right? If this is 7, that's 1. Right? So now I can count 1, 7, 6, 4, 2, 1. And this, if people want to play the name game, the name of this is the name D. So this is in the key of D. All the key of D means is that's where 1 is, or that's where 1 is. It's a line, it's a space underneath. So now, if I want to write something in the key of D, let's say I want to write Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in the key of D. Well, all I do is it starts with 1, 1, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5, right? So the 2 sharps are in there, so I just go 1, 1, count up, 3, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5. And there I have written or transcribed or transposed, that is, I've transposed Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star from the key of C. I've transposed it into the key of D. And all my sharps and flats are right. It will sound right. And I would still read this, wouldn't I, as 1, 1, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5, and I could play it in the key of C. So I could look at it and read it in the key of D, but play it in the key of C. And if I'm using numbers, well, what the hell difference does it make? I should be able to play it in the key of C as easily as I did. All I have to do is learn to shift where 1 is and be able to read from 1 being moved around in different places. Now there's only 2 possible places where 1 can be. It's either going to be on a line or it's going to be on a space. So if you learn reading from any line, dub any line you want, the number 1, and then practice reading up and down from there, and dub any space you want, the number 1, and practice reading up and down, until your eye learns to see it both ways, and that's it. You will have taught yourself to read in any key. And you should be able to transpose what you're seeing in any key into the key of C or whatever key you've learned to jam do, re, mi on.
Okay, when you go on to, when you put the numbers on the line, what number would 5, what tone would 5 be? I mean, is it E, G, or F, or how?
Oh, it's 5. Depends on what note 1 starts on. If 1 starts on D, then 5 is going to be B. But if 1 starts on C, then 5 is going to be G. And if 1 starts on B, then 5 is going to be F. And see, the name of the note is going to change depending on what key you're in. So you have to memorize all 12 keys. You have to memorize the names of the sharps and flats in all 12 keys. But if you read by number, you don't have to. It's always the same distance. It's always the same number. It will always sound the same. The distance to your ear will always be the same, no matter what note I start on. Twinkle, twinkle, or twinkle, 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 twinkle. It's all fives. If I want to sing a distance of 1 to 4, the word I can use is here comes the bride. Or I can go, here comes the bride. Here comes the bride, here comes the bride. Those are all fourths. And I could sing just fourths. Da, 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 da.
Okay, because see, what's happening is, I was told to memorize the notes, and it just looks very boring to me.
It is,
Yeah.
but what I'm trying to say is you have 12 keys to memorize. You have to memorize the same scale 12 times in the 12 keys. Seems to me to be a horrendous job. When I sing it, I'm always going to sing it, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's always going to sound the same regardless of what key I'm in. The patterns between the notes, the distances between the notes in the scale will always be the same, no matter what key I'm in. So why shouldn't I learn to read that way? It makes sense. It makes sense that I should do with my eye and with my mind, what my voice and my ear and my hands naturally do. That's what they do. Now, a fifth on the piano happens to be that size. I don't know, what is that, about 6 inches, I guess. So I could take 6 inches, and I just go over here like a caliper. That's fine. And no matter where I put my hand on the piano, I will always grab 5, even if it's on the black notes, it doesn't matter. See that distance? It's going to stay the same. That distance of a fifth is going to be the same physically, no matter where I put it on the piano. The only thing that's going to change is which one of those notes I'm going to put my navel in front of. And if I put my navel in front of the key of C and play all the white notes, I'm playing in the key of C and I'm comparing everything to my navel, up and down. And if I want to play the key of E flat, I just kind of move over here a little, so that black note lands in the middle of my stomach, and then I play E flat. I don't think anything except numbers. Doesn't matter which place I start on the piano, I just line my navel with any place, any center I want on the piano and go. And as long as I'm reading by interval distance, once I learn to play do, re, mi on the piano in any position, I can start playing everything that I can read in different keys. I've gotten to the point now I can do mass chords of harmony. I find that when you have large blocks of chords like this kind of frightens pianists. They see something like this. They see something like that, and they go, ah! But the truth is, if you take a look, analyze it, well, that's the same note, that's the same note, that's the same note. Ah, that one's moved down 1 step, and that's the same note. All I've done is gone and move that finger over. Boom. So all I have to do is in any large block of chords, look at the one or two fingers that are changing, and I only have to look at those. Keep all the others frozen. These are frozen. So even in a large block of chords like this, when you're moving from one chord to another, often only one or two fingers is moving at a time, and they're only moving stepwise, a half a step or a whole step or something. They're just moving from number 1 to number 2, or from number 5 to number 6. So why should I read the whole thing? All I should look at is say, oh, 6 has changed, or in this case, 1 has changed to 7, and move whichever finger's on 1 down to 7. And I can do that in any key. You see. Now I don't have to look at it all and read it, but I don't have to name these notes every time. All I have to do is name them once in the beginning of a piece, and everything else will work itself out relativistically through the rest of the piece. And it doesn't matter what key I'm in. So all you have to do is get used to reading where 1 starts on a space, any space, or where 1 starts on a line, any line. And if you can do that, then you can read in any key, and you can sing in any key. Another nice thing about that is you can tell the pianist, hey, I'm an alto, and the best key for my voice is B flat. And then he has to transpose into that key. I mean, if you're the singer, that's the way that history goes. You tell the pianist, move it into my key, and they've got to do it. So you might as well learn to sing in the range of your natural voice, whatever that key is, real well, and sing do, re, mi, and be able to sing any piece of music in the key that your voice works best in. Because after you get it working, later you can start moving around your voice to other keys. You can start stretching your voice a little, so it goes up 2 or 3 notes than it normally goes, or down 4 or 5 notes than it normally does. After a while, you learn to read in other keys and know what the names of the notes are. But I feel it's an impossible task. Angel, my lady's been playing music for 25 years. I've been doing it for almost, 35 years now, 36 years. And neither of us has ever been able to learn really well how to read by ABC. I mean, after 25 years, you figure you have it down. It isn't that easy. There's too much to remember. And right now, I could ask her a couple of questions and just stump them. If we tried to relate it in terms of ABCs. It's too hard. It's really too hard. You have to memorize everything by rote.
I agree with the person, because I know a coworker who plays the flute, and she said that it was really easy for her to learn to read music, but she doesn't know anything about scales or chords or anything. She doesn't really read. It's weird.
Yeah, well, as I said, she's fallen into this. She has a good ear.
Yes.
And your ear goes a certain distance, your fingers go a certain distance, and she's learned to put one together with the other without any intellect.
Right.
And in a way that's very good, and in another way very bad. Because the bad part is that she's stuck not knowing what she's doing. Therefore, she probably will never really write or compose. Or she won't be able, she'll get something and she won't know how to change it. Or the worst thing is, you've had this experience, Mark, where you get together, and Mark knows how to read music, and he's a drummer. And one of his biggest gripes, which is also my biggest gripe, is getting together with 5 other people and none of them know how to read. And you're the only one that does. And you could get a song together in 15 minutes, and you have to sit and argue and dicker with them for 4 days to get through one piece of music. It's really a pain in the arse. So if people learn how to read, just like you learned how to read English, if you went to Germany and you decided you were going to live there for 5 years, wouldn't you make an attempt at learning German? And would you want to learn to read in German? Because you know that learning to read the language would make it easier to get around those streets and read advertisements. Just finding your way through the grocery store would be a lot easier, wouldn't it? You wouldn't have to rely on the pictures on the labels. You see, and that's what I'm saying here with music. We want to get to the point where we don't rely on the picture on the label, or the label, the name of the label, because it's relativistic. Now let me go on with this a little bit and show you that if we change the key drastically, this guy here, and we got that guy, let's say, and then all of a sudden we say, somebody says, oh, 1 sharp, 2 sharps, 3 sharps, let's do 4 sharp, oh no, let's make it hard. There's 5 sharps. And this sharp here is on a ledger line above the staff yet. Make it even harder. So now the question is, where's 1? The last sharp is 7. So I can ignore all of this here. Just forget about it. See, this line here would have to be the number 7. So 1 would be right there, just above that. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. There's 1 again. This line, this is G, grubby, boys, dirty, grubby boys, dirty face. And since it lands on the name B, and since B has no sharps or flats on it, this is the key of B. We are in the key of B. Doesn't matter. All we know is 1 lands on that center line. And that's what's important. So now a twinkle, twinkle, little star would go 1, 1, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5. It would look like that on this top half of the staff. You see, you can, by doing this, you can transpose a piece with written writing into another key quite easily. You see, you don't have to think interval by interval every single note. Which is the way I was taught to transpose on the French horn. It's almost impossible. What I would have to do is, if I were in the key of C and it was written in the key of E, well, B and C are a half a step away. So what I was taught to do was to transpose whatever I'm seeing up a half a step. So every single note I have to think about. And if I had figured this out when I was playing the French horn, it would have been a lot easier. The song would have been the same numbers no matter what key I played it in. Okay, so sharps equal the number 7. And the last sharp, if there's 15 sharps, which is theoretically possible, I could have as many sharps or as many flats as I want. Now you know that after 7 sharps, I'm going to obviously be re-sharping double sharping something, because I only have 7 notes. But it doesn't matter. I could put 15 sharps up there, and what you wouldn't be able to tell me what the name of the key is. Nobody would be able to tell me what the name of the key is. But you just find out where the last sharp is, call it 7, and start playing. In any key you can play in. I don't care what key you can play in. What's important is that you play. Okay? That's what's important. What's important is that you do it.
Before you erase that,
Yeah.
you're saying that B equals to 1 down there, B minus, that?
Yeah, in this case, no, this is B. In this case, it's, the name B. This would be called B, the way your teacher's teaching you, and in this case, this would be the key of B. In other words, 1 is B. I can make 1A, or 1, if 1 is A, then we're in the key of A. If the number 1 is Q flat, then we're in the key of Q flat. Regardless of what I call it. What's important is the scale is still do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and it'll still sound that way. And I'll still be able to read it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And all the music in there will be naturally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the only time in the music it will change is if they put a sharp or flat in there. And that's going to change it sharp or flat anyway. Now, 1 flat, 2 flats. Okay, that one's on the line and that one's on the space. When you have flats, flat equals the number 4. Flats are put in fourths rather than sevenths. So the last flat would be the number 4. So if this is 4, then this is 3, this is 2, and this is 1. And you'll notice that 1 is on a key that has a flat on it. The name of this is B. And since it has a flat on it, it's called B flat. So the key we're in is the key of B flat. If you want to call it a name. I don't even like calling them names at all. The only reason I say this is to help confuse someone. Really, it confuses you. For me to tell you the way that they call it out there, it's just going to confuse you. I wish I could somehow never mention it. But people usually don't like it.
Don't you think they could make up a much better system than the system they have now for notation of music?
That's what I'm saying. If you use the system that we have now this way, you can't have a better system. And this system allows us to see harmony, to see melodies, and to write rhythm all at the same time with one glyph. One little musical glyph tells us all that. We're getting 3
They
pieces.
can have sharps and flats.
Oh, yes.
Keyboard.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Modern composers are getting away from the whole idea of sharps and flats altogether. But one thing about the sharps and flats on the keyboard, well, one thing I'll argue for it, okay? Because you have 3 black ones and 2 black ones, it helps you get your bearings or figure out where you are. If I had added one more black key right here in the middle, so the black keys and the white keys are all spaced identical, now where are you? How are you going to get your bearings? And if you go a fifth, how can you look back to see you've been there? And every time you go somewhere, you have to burn your bridges, because you have no way of knowing where you are.
So that's probably the only reason they have those.
That's why it stopped there. You see, the next logical development in music is to have 14 notes, not 12. In my opinion, evolution goes on. We've evolved from...
Stick more notes in between, you think?
Yeah, and what we're going to do is we're going to get what we call semi or microtones that will fit right
You
into...
can probably put hundreds in.
I've already invented it.
Actually, you can put 43 in.
You can get, well, I have...
You can get one for every degree that there's a cycle, like for a frequency of 440, you know, you can have 440. Of course, you probably can't hear below, what is it that you can hear below?
Can't hear below 16.
That would be a really neat instrument because...
Yeah, I have a hard time hearing
Well,
below
actually,
18
they have that,
now.
it's like fretless string instruments.
Yeah, fretless will
Is that-
do that. That's what the violin and the cello and the fretless...
Is that like jogging falling?
Yes, they're very pentatonic and they're very fixed scales based on what we call mean tuning, which is a very bright, beautiful tuning where they bring out the fifth. It's real talent. I love it. But you see in the oud here, which was the precursor to the lute, there are no frets. They jam fretless. And this was because, again, any wandering troubadour singing could decide where he wanted to land in those cracks. And one troubadour would run into another troubadour, and he would sing a song about his, and the other guy would sing a song about his thing. And after a while, it occurred to them, well, why don't we sing together? And what happened is they tried, and they found out this guy was playing different than that guy. So what happened is they experimented by creating frets. And what they did with this is they threw a popsicle stick through here with a piece of string on there, create a fret, and they could move them around wherever they wanted. And then what would happen is you ran across another troubadour, you'd see where their frets are, put your frets where their frets are, and jam. You were able to sing at least in the same keys. Then later, of course, the need for harmony, as we started getting 3 and 4 people to sing together, it became even more important. So what happened is the scale had to become more fixed, more rigid. Eventually we went to 12 tones, which divide the octave exactly into 12 equal pieces. You can continue that as far as you want to go. I have a quantum scale, which is 137 notes per octave. And it makes for very fantastic harmonies. But the writing of it, you see, if instead of having 7 notes, I had 137.
Is there any similarity?
How am I going to write it?
Like dividing the clock up 12 or...
Yeah, it is. It's very much like dividing the clock, except what the dividing is a square root. The square root of 2. And the reason for that is the brain, the senses, the mechanisms that we hear and see and feel with, process all the numbers coming in through all of our senses by using the square root law, the square root function. The brain can only count up to the number 2. The brain can't count any higher. The brain counts to the number 2. The brain does not know the number 1. It knows the number 1 is a notion, but it cannot experience the number 1. The universe itself is dualistic. Phenomena in the universe is dualistic, based on the number 2. So nothing in the known universe that's physical, that pushes things around, can be reduced to the number 1. It can always be reduced to a process and a thing, or an object, right? And the action on the object. And so what happens is, it is only when all process in the universe comes to unity, which is not consciousness, right? If we were at unity with the process of the universe, then we could not know it. So we had to separate ourselves from unity with the universe in order to reflect on it. Therefore, you always have this point and this point creating a dialogue. The dialogue between point A and point B creates the known physical universe.
So you wouldn't want to be at one with the universe?
Oh, no,
Then you would
your
be-
senses want to try to find it, but you can't do it. And the way your senses do it is by square rooting numbers. If a number comes into my senses, I square root it once. And I do that by touching it. My hand grabs something and I square root it. Then I put it in my mouth and I taste it as a child and I square root it
What do you
again.
mean by square root?
Just that, exactly that. Square root, you know.
Times it.
This thing, reciprocal into 2. And the musical scale is this. This is the musical scale. It's the 12th root of 2. Consciousness itself, the mind itself, is the 137th root of 2. That's the brain, as opposed to the mind. Here's the universe. The universe is the 136th root of 2.
How much is the brain?
This is mathematical metaphysics. And this is where my music theory has taken me. My study of music numbers has gotten me to the point where I've actually figured out the numbers that the brain uses to process thoughts. And the senses, all 7 senses use, I mean 7 senses, that's adding the intuitive, they all use the square root law. And I found you can take any number up to the size of the universe and square root it 7 times and almost reduce it to 1. And if you use one number past the size of the universe, in 7 square roots, you can't get it down to 1. It's 2 point something.
Is it impossible to get a square root?
Yes. And what happens if I square root something 3 times? I'm almost at 1, aren't I? Any number up to the size of the universe, if I square root it 3 times, I'll get it down within the physical limits of our solar system. I can reduce the whole universe by 3 square roots down to the size of the solar system.
What is this?
I can reduce anything in the solar system by 3 square roots down to less than the size of this room. So that means that I can get a practical working knowledge of the universe by using any one of my 3 senses to try to understand it. By looking at it from 3 different points of view, with 3 of my senses, I'll take any number that I can come across and get a practical working knowledge of it. Get close to understanding its unity, its oneness. But I still won't. It'll be 1.998463256, blah, 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 blah. The decimal points will go on for almost eternity. Now, if I square root it 7 times, I'll come closer to 1. But I'll only come 1 decimal point closer. I will have to square root it 18 times after that to resolve it 1 decimal point closer, and several hundred times to get it 1 more decimal point, and to get down to resolve something close to 1 by using the square root law, I would have to do it several thousand times. So that means I'd have to be a scientist. I'd have to get obsessed with trying to know one something, or knowing the oneness of something. And the more I get into that one thing, like all I do is spend my whole life trying to understand that chair. The physics, the music, the art, the culture of that chair. I will have to do it thousands upon thousands of times to come close to 1 But no matter how much I do it, I'll never get one. That's life, isn't it? The more I've learned about music, I'm teaching you that less is more. And the more I learn about music, and the more you learn about music, the simpler it will get. And then what I'm teaching you, which seems so hard for you to grasp, is so, almost juvenile for me to understand it now. Only because I spent many more years, spending many thousands of hours, getting all 7 of my senses involved in that understanding. So now it's gotten to the point where I have so much knowledge in me that this seems quite elementary to me. It's simple. So much more, which seems so heavy to you, is less to me. And as you get deeper and deeper into music, now my friend Ben Olson has been into music for 50 years as a composer. And he says the one thing that he loves about music is he's only beginning to scratch the surface of his understanding of music. And he is what I consider to be a musical god. He's probably the finest composer in the world today, and I know the greatest pianist in this area, the greatest pianist I've ever heard, Ben Olson. And he's getting up there in age. And he is what I would consider, it's like knowing Beethoven. If you hung around with Beethoven, just imagine what that must be like. And that's what it's like knowing Ben. He's a musical god. And anyone that's ever met him, I don't care who, they go, some of the greatest musicians I've ever known, meet him and just go, they're blown away by him. But he thinks that he's just begun. He feels it's all gotten so simple for him, but he's just scratched the surface. Take the sugar slush. I hate brown M&Ms. You're lucky Van Halen isn't here, I'll tell you. Van Halen would tear the place apart. So basically, to get back to this, the last sharp, no matter how many sharps there are, is always the number 7. And the last flat, no matter how many flats there are, is always the number 4. You can always figure out where 1 is by looking for the last flat. So in the case of the bass clef here, this last flat, which happens to be on that line, is the number 4. So counting up, 5, 6, 7, right there, that B, in this, well actually that's the key D. So we're in the key of D flat. But that's 1, I don't have to know what key I'm in. Or whether I'm in treble clef or bass clef, it doesn't matter. All I have to do is look for the last sharp. Here in bass clef, the last sharp is on this space, so that means 1 has got to be on this line. Right there.
So 1 is right above the last
Sharp.
4 flat.
Always.
One is right above the last flat also?
The last sharp, no.
But the last
Flat is number 4.
Oh, number 4.
Is the number 4. The last
So you gotta
flat
go
equals
4
the
down?
number 4. So if I had, here's the Mr. Natural Staff, the grand natural staff, and it doesn't matter if I had this, and then I'm going to put these out of order. This won't be where they are, the way they go. Oops, I put one there already. Okay. This is not perfect theory. So what's the last flat? That is. And the last flat, we can ignore all these before it, it's on this line, so that's got to be the number 4. So counting down, this would be 3, 2, this has got to be the number 1. So X marks the spot.
Is there an easier way to see the relationship?
No, I don't know of an easier way. Just memorizing that the last flat is the number 4, and the last sharp is the number 7 will help you find 1.
So the alternative to this is memorizing which key has on the sharp.
What about the second to the
And
last
memorizing
flat?
how many flats or sharps are in each key. How many flats are on the key of E flat?
Well, no, actually.
2. But you'd have to memorize that. In the key of E flat, how many sharps are there?
What about the second to
3.
the last flat? Isn't the
Yeah.
second to the last flat
Is 1.
is 1? Okay, so that's how you do it.
They put the flats on in fourths. So another way you could find 1 is the flat before the last flat would actually be on the number 1. But you see the reason I don't teach you that, because in the key of C, there's none. And in the key of F, there's only 1 flat. So how do you find the flat in 4? So in those 2 cases, you wouldn't be able to find 1. But here, this is 4, 4, 3, 2, that's 1. So in the key of F, okay. Now the only thing else you have to know is what happens while in the piece you see a sharp or a flat. That is simple. You just do it. If I've written in the key of C, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, here's 1 again. Let's say the piece says 6 sharp or 7 flat. 6 sharp, believe it or not, is different than 7 flat. And on the violin, they would actually be different notes. But on the keyboard, they're the same key. And I'm not going to go into a long explanation of why. It has to do with another 200 years worth of history. But anyway, I would normally go for the number 6 in whatever key I'm in, and then go a half a step higher, or in the case of the guitar, 1 fret more. And what I would do is I would arrive on this note, which would be 6 sharp. Vice versa, if I went to stretch for 7, wherever 7 was, but I went a half a step shy of that, I made it smaller, I diminished this 7 by a half a step, then I can call that flat. So what you do is if you see a 7 flat, you go for where 7 would be, but then you go a half a step below it, half a step lower in pitch. Or if you go for the 6, you'd go a half a step higher. In both these cases, you would arrive at the same place on your axe. But a sharp is treated as a sharp, meaning go higher in pitch. And a flat would be treated as a flat, meaning that what you're seeing is actually lower in pitch than what it looks like. But it's always just a half a step or 1 fret away. Always. No more than that. Here's the only problem. I almost hate to bring it up. What about neutral?
Cancels the signature.
Pardon?
Cancels the flat or sharp or dash.
What if I have a flat key where there's a whole bunch of flats? What does the neutral do in canceling the flatness?
Raises your half step.
And it acts like what? It even looks like a sharp, doesn't it? So, if I have a key that has flats in it, anytime I see a neutral sign, it acts like a sharp. Okay? But, something else about this sharp sign. It's a beautiful piece of iconograph here. It also looks like that, doesn't it? What if I had sharps in the key signature? If it's canceling the sharpness, what is it doing? It's flattening. So in a sharp key, the neutral sign looks like a flat. And in a flat key, it looks like a sharp. The neutral does the opposite of whatever the key is, because it's canceling that.
Isn't a double sharp an X?
Yes. Well, many composers are now they're doing that for the sake
That's
of
kind
your
of stupid.
for your eyeball. But an X becomes a double sharp.
Why wouldn't they just put it the next full step up?
For the same reason, I don't call a 6 sharp or 7 flat the same note, because one is the number 6 and one is the number 7. And if I'm going to write something in correct music theory, where I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, you'll find there are some scales which it might be easier to write the notes so they're all arranged on strange number patterns. You know, so So you get simple sharps and flats. But then you're breaking the rules of the perfect music theory. And what happens is in the rules of perfect music theory, everything must be numbered 1 through 7.
But it's not really perfect, is it?
It is, and theoretically it is. It's just that the media that we work with is not. But the music theory is perfect. That is why many times what you see isn't what it sounds like. And often you can write the same sound 3 or 4 different ways with music theory and make it look different, but it'll sound the same. We have similar things in English, homonyms, antonyms, synonyms, in which the spelling might be different, but the meaning is different. Or the spelling might be the same, and it has a different meaning, or the spelling is different, it sounds the same, or in music we call that enharmonic. When something looks different because of music theory, but it sounds the same, we call that an enharmonic, or an equivalent. That happens with numbers. When we're thinking melody, we only think of the numbers 1 through 7. But when we think harmony, we can think up to the number 13. So we have 2 different number patterns that we have to learn to think in. The melodic number patterns and the harmonic number patterns. Now they're interrelated. It's what I had on the board when you first came in. If I said this is 1, 3, 5, 7, I can go on if I'm thinking harmonically and say 9, 11, and 13. Odd, from line to line is an odd number. Or I could do it from the spaces. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, from space to space. It's an odd number. And if I were thinking of chords, you always think of the chord from wherever 1 is or wherever the bottom note is, up to as high as 2 octaves. But when we're thinking melody, we only have 7 notes. So this would be 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6. Therefore, 9 equals 2. 9 is the enharmonic of the number 2. And 11 is the enharmonic of the number 4. And 13 is the enharmonic of the number 6. That means if I want to play a 1, 3, 5 chord, and I want to add a 9th to the chord, I don't have to come up here and play this. In order to make this a 9th chord, I can go 1, 2, and I can add this note, the same 2, which equals 9, right there, and get the same sound. You see, this is where the spelling of what we're doing and the sound are different than each other. Since 9 equals 2, I could make this 1, 3, 5 a 9 chord by simply putting in the 2. That's a 9 chord. Or I could make it an 11th chord. I can make it an 11th chord by adding the 4 to this. Now this is an 11th chord, because 4 equals the number 11. That's only because we're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 becomes 1. We shift. Since we have an odd number of notes, what's going to happen is as we go from octave to octave, we're going to shift from line to space, and then we're going to stay space for a while, and then shift back to line and stay line for a while, and shift back to space. But if we're going up 2 octaves, we can just go every other line. And this is what you have to do when you're spelling chords, and this is what you do when you're reading do-re-mi melodies. You'll see these are related. And it's nice to know. 9 equals 2, 11 equals 4, and 13 equals 6. It's nice to know that. Because you'll see, they ask you for a C7 13 chord. You don't have to stretch your hands way out here to play it. You can play it all in one tiny little place. Because the 13th is just adding the number 6. So if I just add in the 6th, I've got a 13th chord. I don't have to. We have what we call close harmony and then spread harmony. In spread harmony, you have to have lots of fingers. They go real wide. Rock man and off hands. all you need to do to read. When you come across the flat, you go a half a step lower. When you come across the sharp, you go a half a step lower. It all depends on, with neutrals, on what key you're in. If you're in a flat key, the neutral acts like a sharp. You just see all neutrals as sharps, that's all. And if you're in a sharp key, then every time you see a neutral, think of it as a flat. It works out the same way. If you see a 4 neutral, well then that's 4 flat if I'm in a sharp key. So I just go a half a step lower than where 4 would normally be. And it's going to work out right. And that's it. The thing about using keys and writing in keys is once you figure out where 1 is in the key, you can forget about all the sharps and flats that are in the key. They normally occur. They're occurring normally. So you just don't have to notate them. And through the music, they will not notate them. Where the sharps and flats are occurring within the key, they just don't notate them. The only time they notate them is when in the key, they move out of the key. When they are exceptions. That's why they're called accidentals. They're called accidentals because they occur accidentally outside the normal stretch of things, the normal fit. The normal fit has to be tucked slightly different here, so they always notate wherever they're going to sharpen or flatten. Now, that's enough to learn to read in one key most music, and you can transpose anything you read in any other key into the key of C, or like on these little calculators, you can always use the numbers 1 through 7 on those calculators, put something in there in the key of C, regardless of what key it's written in. And the next thing for you to do is to learn to grab pieces of music that have sharps or flats in them, find out where 1 is, write the numbers over it, and just program the numbers into those little calculators, and you will see how will come your music, and you can start singing along with it. Okay? You can now move 1 wherever you want, and you can always read it no matter where it is in one key. So if you learn to play one key very well, and learn how to improvise in that one key, and learn how to read all music, transposing it into that key, then you have learned more than most musicians. And you will be able to do transposition very easily, which most musicians find very hard. You'll be able to play anything in any key in one key. Then later, all you have to do is learn a new scale, and everything you've learned, you can start jamming in that new scale. And then you learn another scale, and suddenly you're playing everything in that scale. And that is the heart of transposition. And that's why this system is so much more superior, because it makes transposition absolutely obvious. And in the other system, if you're going to call it names, and you have to convert from one name to another name, that's the linguistics on that is pretty, translation there is pretty complex. Okay, now, remember I was saying there are what they call majors and minors and augmented and diminishes and all those scary words. We know that augment means make bigger. And we know that diminish means make smaller, because I did that with rhythms. But what we have in music is, when we first had these pentatonic scales here, these 5 notes, in those 5 notes, there are certain interval ratios that occur that are very simple and basic. And they've been used for so long that we have considered the tuning on those perfect. So certain interval patterns have always been considered perfect. And no matter where they're played or where they're at, they're always perfect. And the thing about a perfect interval is it's so perfect that if I sharpen it or flatten it, it changes the sound so radically that it makes it feel as if it's been augmented or diminished. But there are other intervals, which I'll explain in a little bit, which do not have that effect. For instance, seconds and thirds do not have that effect. And what happens is, for the reasons of science and acoustic, there are 2 versions of the third. One version we call the major third, which you could also think of as the perfect third. But there's also another version of the third called the minor third, which is a little bit, it's a half step less than the major third. And Since our ear will accept either of those major or minors as a third, we'll recognize it as a distance of 3 with our ear. Either case, we'll recognize it as a distance of 3. We have those two versions, that ambivalence. Now if we make the minor third, which is normally a little bit shyer, more minor, that is, we flatten it, it now has gotten to the point where it's no longer recognized as a third, and we have to say it's been diminished. But then you go from the minor, you have the major third, and if we make the major third larger, what happens is it now changes, it doesn't sound like a third, and we call that an augmented. So in the case of those notes, we have 4 names that we can call it. And in the case of perfect intervals, we only have 3 names. It's perfect, augmented, or diminished. But there are other intervals that are major and minor, and then the minor can be diminished, and the major can be augmented. Now the reason for this is this chart that's always been sitting up here. Next week I'll get a bunch of these Xeroxed up for you. We have a smaller version of it. What this chart is doing is, this note here, C, which is this note on the piano, that note, if I were to take a tuning meter and check it, it would be 65.406 cycles per second. It's roughly 65 times each second that note is swinging back and forth, throwing air off on either side. So the frequency of that note is 65 cycles per second. Now, when that string doubles, I'll give you an example. Actually, I'll use my slinky, it's more fun. When the string is vibrating, it's going like this. This is called the fundamental. And this is going on that note. 65 times a second is going like that, up and down, 65 times a second, producing that frequency. This string, the motion of this string is not this simple. Unfortunately, this can also move like this. And now I can see I get 2 waves, right? Okay, this is called the first partial, or the second or the first overtone, or the second partial. This is the first overtone. What that means is the string is dividing itself by 2. And what we're getting is the wavelength of a frequency that's twice the frequency as this one, the fundamental. So if this is 65 cycles per second, then this one here has got to be 2 times 65, or it's 130 cycles per second. Okay? That ratio of 1 to 2 is so perfect in this string vibrating, we call that an octave. Do, do. Twice the frequency is the octave. Okay? And the tuning is so perfect, from here it is on the piano, there it is as a string. Here's the perfect string multiplying itself, and here is the note on the piano. You'll notice that out to the fraction, they're identical. So the difference between the actual physical string and the note that the piano is tuned to is 0. That means that octaves are perfect. And so we call octaves perfect intervals. If I sharpen an octave, it now becomes an augmented. If I flatten the octave, it becomes a diminished octave, because it's a perfect interval. That is, the difference between an actual string vibrating and the note tuners tune it to are identical. Okay? Yeah.
So, when improvising, is it better to use perfect intervals?
Perfect, well, perfect intervals are slow. They're resting points in music. Perfect intervals tend to give you cadences. They create the comma or the period. And what happens is other intervals, minor intervals, and diminished intervals are thermal, they're hot. They don't like to stand, they don't like to be sung for very long. You move on them quickly. Anyway, then what happens is, if the string also does this, let's see. See, I got 3? Yeah, there we go. I got 3 humps now, right? That's 3, and there's 2, and there's 1. Now when a string vibrates, all 3 of those are going on at the same time. But that ratio of 3, this 3 here, that's pretty tricky. It's hard for the string to do that. It's an odd multiple. And what happens is, the string multiplies that frequency by 3 perfectly. But the tuning system that we've evolved over the years, the one that Pythagoras invented, is not perfect. The difference between what would be the G on the piano and the G that's being produced by the C string is a difference of 0.22 sharp. 0.22 cycles per second. It's 1/4 of a cycle per second sharp. Well, 1/4 of a cycle ain't much, but it's enough not to be perfectly perfect. So the distance from here to here is an octave. The distance from here to here, you'll notice, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes. That is the distance of a fifth. And a fifth in music is considered perfect. Since it's still less than 1 cycle per second, in there, it's considered perfect. There's not that much difference in the tuning. So fifths are considered perfect. And if you saw a fifth on the music chart, if you see a distance of 5, this distance is considered perfect. And if I were to sharpen this note, it now becomes an augmented fifth. Or if I flatten it, it's a flatted fifth. It only has those 3 names: perfect, augmented, and...
You can't call it diminished.
You can't? Well, yeah, it's diminished. Sorry, that's a diminished fifth or a augmented fifth. But you can't call it minor. Because you only have a perfect fifth. And fifths only come in one variety, perfect, because they're so close to the fundamental, and their tuning is so close to being perfect, that the slightest change in it creates a lot of tension in us. Okay, now what happens is, when the note multiplies itself by 4 times, it gets the same note again, C. It's not a new note this time, but the same note, C. And this note here, the tuning on it, is perfect in relationship to the beginning. But what about from here to there? What's this distance here? That distance is a fourth. That's right. The fourths and fifths are related to each other. A fourth is a fifth upside down. That's all. Or a fourth inverted becomes a fifth. Turn 5 upside down, you get 4. 4 upside down, you get 5. And the distance from here to here is still only off by that much. Therefore, a distance of 4, since it's still in the lower end of the overtone series, is also considered perfect. And you only get 1/4 in this whole scheme. If you'll notice, we have an octave, and then we have 5, and then we have a fourth, and we don't get any more fourths, fifths, or octaves. So, since there's only 1/4 in the whole thing, and 1/5 in the whole thing, those are considered perfect. So a distance of 1 to 4, this distance is also considered a perfect interval. And if I sharpen the fourth, it becomes an augmented fourth. And if I flatten the fourth, it becomes a diminished fourth. It doesn't have any other versions.
Is that why 145 is the basic structure?
Yes.
Because those are the perfect.
Yes.
And everything else is traveling away from home.
Yeah, the way of thinking of it is more like a dictatorship. Think of it more like this. When that harmonic structure was created, it was a time of kings and queens. So we have 1 who is the king. We have 5 who is the queen. Now, as you know, the queen has some clout in the court. If she wants to off somebody's head, it's off. Now, if the king says no, on the other hand, it doesn't happen. So the king's still boss. In music, the 1 chord, or the root, is the king, and the 5 chord becomes the queen. And moving between 1 and 5 a lot is the relationship of king to queen. And you can move between them, and the power very subtly moves between them, and one has lots of power, dominant power, but the other is more dominant than the other, right? Then we have the relationship of 4, the offspring of the king and the queen, or if you will, the prince or the princess. The prince or the princess now becomes the 4 chord, the relationship of 4. So here we have the relationship of the king, the queen, and their offspring, the child. And that relationship is perfect. Now, of course, sometimes we all know kings have things called mistresses, the concubines, right? And the concubines would be these intervals up here. As a matter of fact, the first concubine that arrives happens to be a concubine called the major third. You'll see that the next overtone, 5 divisions of the string, begets us a new note called E. And the distance from C is only 1, 2, 3. And this is what we call a major third. The reason we call it a major third is, one, you'll notice the tuning between the perfect string and the one on the piano are more than a cycle per second now. It's actually 2.598 cycles per second flat. Flatter than perfect. So the first major third that now arrives in this system happens to be slightly flat. And because it's slightly flat, we don't hear it as a perfect interval. And it creates a little ambiguity in our ear. That means it's got some thermal, some heat in it. It moves. It's got action. It's not grounded and locked into the overtone structure. It's loose enough to be thermal. Start to get away from the vibration of the string. And it's off in tuning. But then look what arrives next. 6 is a multiple of 3. The G, the 5th, and another 5th occurs here in the 6th overtone. And it is also a third away from the E. But it's not as big as that third. It happens to be a minor third. And so what happens is in the 4, 5, 6 ratio of the overtones, we get the first major chord. And that major chord is 1, 3, 5, 3, 1. In those overtones, you have the major chord going on. And another thing about this major chord is it's built of a major third, and it's built on top of that a minor third. So we now have 2 kinds of thirds. We have a major third and a minor third. That's like the mistress, right? And the mistress is bastard, child, yes, if you will. So now we have to refer to thirds not as being perfect, because the tuning is too far off to be perfect, and they come in 2 flavors, major and minor. And we're used to hearing this, and we're used to hearing that. And the distance between a major third and a minor third for our ear is not that much difference. So we'll accept both of those as a third. So now we get 2 flavors of the same interval. And so a distance of 1 to 3, like this, could be a major, or it could be a minor. Now, if it is a major third, and I make it sharp, I now augment it. But if it's a major third, and I make it flat, I only make it minor. I would have to flat it again to make the minor go smaller than that, and augment it. I mean, diminish it, I'm sorry. I'd have to double flat the major third in order to get past its minor, then down to the diminished. So you have major and minor, and it'll look like that. And if it's major and I sharpen it, I'm raising it to an augmented chord. And if it's major and I flat it, I'm only making it minor. And if it's minor and I flat it, I'm making it diminished. If it's minor and I sharpen it, I'm only making it major. So by sharpening and flatting a third, I can change it from major to minor. See, so that gives me that half step that cuts around it, and the 2 names. And that's because it's happening higher in the overtones, and its tuning is further off, and it now is not as critical. So it's not perfect. So it's not tied or locked into the overtones. It's looser. And so you get those 2 versions. Then what happens as we continue to go up, if you'll notice, you now get another 4th, which turns out to be almost a perfect 4th. And you get this whole step here and a whole step there. And what happens is this whole step here and the whole step there are different whole steps. So the second is not the same. You get a major and a minor second. So the distance of 1 to 2 now comes in 2 flavors. It can be major or it can be minor. If it's minor and I sharpen it, I only make it major. And if it's major and I flatten it, I only make it minor. But if I flatten it again, I now make it diminished. Or if it's here, if it's here and I sharpen it and then sharpen it again, double sharp it, I'll get augmented. Or if it's here and I sharpen it once, I get augmented. You see what happens? That's why we have this name game confusion. What you have is the major and minor are two forms of the same number. And then depending on which way you go, it'll be diminished or augmented. And that has it. And as we get up here, higher and higher, you notice the intervals get tighter and tighter together. Up here we have minor seconds, half steps that start occurring in the overtones. Until finally, when you get up here to the 16th overtone, from 16 on up, you get a whole chromatic scale in that one note. So inside any note, any sound, is a major chord. There's whole steps and half steps, major, minor, thirds. And then there's a whole chromatic scale inside of it. When you get up, if you can hear high enough. I've gotten to the point now where I can hear any note, and if I want to, make my mind go into the overtones high enough, and I can hear the whole chromatic scale inside of it. And as your ear becomes more sophisticated musically, that's what will happen. At first, you'll be lucky you can hear the fifth. But then after a while, you start to hear this chord going on inside of one note. You'll hear that chord, and then later you'll hear beyond the chord. And as your musical mind and your musical ear develops, you'll have higher and higher and higher and higher. In other words, you stop filtering out sound, only taking in certain very perfect relationships, and your ear begins to accept any sound. Till finally all sounds become equal. And in any note, I can hear all sounds, all notes.
What about the harmonic on a guitar?
Same thing, you can pluck them out and find them. You can find these harmonics. You can do it by dividing a string. You can take a string and measure it, and then divide it up mathematically.
You're doing it on the guitar on the, I think, 12th fret, that's an octave, right?
12 frets an octave, yeah. I'll show you on this little crazy device here. I can demonstrate these principles. You see all these nice little strings. If I pluck this guy here, I can. Here's an overtone. Here's the octave. See? Twinkle.
By holding it down not as hard, was that on octave?
There was a whole major chord in there. It puts around with this a little bit later. Kind of interesting. I have little marks grooved in there where the overtones are. And if you put a pencil eraser on the string, you can pluck it, move the pencil eraser around, and pluck the string and pull out the whole chromatic scale from one string. Any of those. Whole major chords in there. It's real fun. Pluck out chords. Boo, 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 boo. Okay, now what happens is, because these guys come in major and minor versions, thirds and seconds, if we read the chromatic scale, now we have to figure out whether something is a major third or a minor third. So we have to figure out whether it's a major second or a minor second. And the way you do that is what I call packets. Remember, when we're going up the scale, between me and fa, see there's a half a step here. There's no black note, right? And then there's a half a step missing there, right? There's a half step that's missing. We don't see that half step on this chart here, because this makes everything an integer, perfect. Everything looks like whole steps on this graph. So what's hidden from you, what you don't realize, is on this graph, there are certain places on the graph which are naturally a half step. And in any major scale, you're going to have 5 whole steps and 2 half steps. And the 2 half steps will always occur in the same place. As a matter of fact, in any minor scale, you will have 5 whole steps and 2 half steps. And in any augmented scale, you will have 5 whole steps and 2 half steps. And in any diminished scale, you will have 5 whole steps and 2 half steps. As a matter of fact, in any mode, you will have 5 whole steps and 2 half steps. All the scales are made up of 5 whole steps and 2 half steps arranged in different patterns. And where the half steps fall determine the scale. That's what it all boils down to. Wherever those half steps fall will determine what kind of scale you're in. Now there's a reason for that. That has to do with the overtones, which I'll get into. But in the diatonic scale, when we're working with, the half step occurs between 3 and 4 and between 7 and 1. See, in other words, if we will in piano language, C, D, E, and F. Between the notes E and F, there is a half step missing. C, D, E, and F. Right there, there's a half step missing. That is naturally only a half a step. We're going from here to here, I'm actually going 2 half steps, what's called a whole step. So here we have naturally a half a step. And then G, A, B to C. Again, we have a half a step that occurs. Now knowing where that half a step is will tell you whether an interval is major, minor, augmented, or diminished. And you'll be able to read chromatically in the diatonic scale if you just know where those half steps are. And I call those half steps packets. If you can figure out where the packet is, in this case, in this key here, we're in the key of F, where 1 starts there, and between 3 and 4 is where the packet's going to occur no matter what key we're in. And so between 3 and 4, or between this space and that line, is a packet. And here, between 7, this space, and that line is a packet. Now, what does this allow us to do? Well, show that. All the notes in the scale are always shown in their perfect and their major. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is 1. Between 3 and 4 is a packet. And between 7 and 1 is a packet. That is a distance of 2. And that would be a major second, because there's no packets. So that means that's a whole step there. From here to there is a whole step. So from here to there is a major second. Or if I went from here to there, I'd have what's called a major third. That's a major third. Now what happens when I go for a fourth? You will notice that there's a packet in there. A packet occurs when I go for a fourth. For a fourth to be a perfect fourth, it must have 1 packet. For a second to be a major second, it must have no packets. And for a third to be a major third, it must have no packets. But in order to be a perfect fourth, it must have 1 packet. That means if it has 2 packets, it's too small. It's been diminished. And if this fourth had no packets, then it would be an augmented fourth because it'd be too large. Because fourths have to have at least 1 half step in them. Okay, if I try to go from 1 to 5 now, you'll notice there's a packet in there. So any fifth, in order to be a perfect fifth, must have 1 half step in it. If it doesn't have that packet, it is not a perfect fifth. This is called a major. This is a major sixth, this distance from here to there. And you'll notice the major sixth also has 1 packet in it. And this is a major seventh. And you will notice that a major seventh also has 1 packet in it. It isn't until I get to the octave, or 8, that I have both half steps in there. All octaves must have 2 half steps in there, or 2 packets. If I look at something that looks like an 8, but it only has 1 half step in there, then it's bigger than it should be. So it's an augmented 8. But if I look at the distance of 1 to 8, and I wind up having 3 half steps in there, then it's too small. It must be a diminished octave. And that's how you can tell whether something is major, minor, augmented, or diminished, perfect or not, is simply by seeing how many half steps. Anything from 3 down, a second and a third, must not have any half steps. But everything from there up must have 1 half step in it. And if it's got 2 half steps or no half steps, then it's too big or too small. Now let's see how that works. Let's say this is 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6. The half step must always come between 3 and 4. So that means from here, between this line here, and this space here, is a packet. Okay? And between 7 and 8, there must be a packet. That's a third, right? What kind of a third is it? Does it have any packets inside of it? Inside of it? No. Therefore, it is a major third. Now that looks like a third, but now there's a packet inside of it, isn't there? So although it looks the same as this, it's not. It's a half a step smaller. Therefore, this third is a minor third. What about this one? Is that major or minor? Minor. That's right. What about this one? Right, because there's a half step up there between 7 and 8, you see. Now you can tell major from minor. Okay, what about from 7 to 2? Major or minor? Yeah. It's minor. Because the packet is between 7 and 8. So if that's 7 to 2, there must be a packet in there. Where on the other hand, going from 8 to 3 here, there's no packet. So this is major. Major, minor, 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 major. They all look like thirds, but what distinguishes them from major and minor is where does the packet fall? Is there a package inside? Is there naturally a half step occurring there that wouldn't normally occur? Okay. What distance is that? Fourth. Right. Now, the question is it a perfect fourth or is it augmented or diminished? It's perfect. Why? It has 1 packet in it, therefore it's a perfect fourth. And if this were spelled like that, now, is it perfect anymore? No, it is now augmented. So I would know that's an augmented fourth, not just because it has a sharp on it, but because I know without the sharp, there's 1 packet in there, it must be perfect, and therefore this augments it. Now what happens if I go from here to there? That's a fourth, isn't it? Is it perfect?
Diminished.
That's right, it is not perfect. Why? There is no packet in it, and it's not diminished. It's augmented. It's too big. In order to be a perfect fourth, it must have 1 packet. And you see, I'm going from the number 4 here up to the number 7. And the packet is between 3 and 4, and it's between 7 and 8. So from 4 to 7, there's no packet.
That's the only time that you can write either a fifth or a fourth that won't be.
That's right. As a matter of fact, that is I gave you that one because that's the only fourth that turns out with no packet. If I write fourths anywhere else on here at all, there'll be a packet in there. No matter where I write them, if I write it from here to there,
So it'll
see,
always
there'll be a
perfect.
packet.
It'll always be perfect unless it's that.
All fourths will be perfect except that one. That's the only one. Between A and D. That would.
And the fifth will always be perfect? Everywhere?
As a matter of fact, no, that's not true either. What happens with the fifth is all fifths are perfect except there's one position where it's not.
Between 3 and 7?
Yeah. If I go from 7, or actually if I go from 8, right, down to 4, we're all right. If I go from 7 to here,
Yeah, right.
what will happen is there'll be one place in which the fifth winds up being too small. I'll have 2 packets in here. Every place else it will have 1 packet. But there'll be one place on the keyboard where I wind up with 2 half steps. And you can see it, since this is where those half steps occur, if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, that's got a half step, so it's okay. But if I do it over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you see I have a half step there, and I do it there, I got a click. See? That sounds right. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. But when I do it here, see, I got 2 half steps stuck in between. So that fifth is naturally too small. It's a diminished fifth. It will look like a fifth on the scale. It will look like a perfect fifth when you go from B up to F. If I go from this B up to this, it will look like a fifth, but there's a half step. I have it in the wrong place. Anyway, that's not in the right place.
You can't form a major or minor chord out of that fifth.
You'd have to make it a half step larger. In the case of this fourth, in order to make it perfect, since it's too big, I would have to put a flat on there, and that will make it now a perfect fourth. Or I can put a sharp down here, can't I? And that'll make it a perfect fourth. In other words, I have to get rid of a half step someplace to take up for the packet that's missing. In the case of that fifth that has 2 packets in it, I would have to add a half step someplace, either to the bottom or the top, in order to get rid of one of those packets, because fifths can only have 1 packet in them. Now sixths and sevenths also. If they're major fifth, sixth, and if it's a major seventh, it will also have only 1 packet in it. So now you're reading chromatic. And all those great mysteries that they laid on you in music theory are cleared up with this. Yeah, let's put 5 up here. So this is 3 and 4. That's where that happens. And this is 7 and 8. That's where that happens. Okay. So if I write now something that goes from, that is a sixth, and there's only 1 packet in that sixth, therefore it's a major sixth. Now if I want to make it a minor sixth, I could sharpen this. And if I want to make it even smaller, go from minor to diminished sixth, I can do that. Right? I've taken a half step away from the bottom, made it minor. And now I've taken a half step away and driven it even closer. And now this is from D sharp to B flat would be a diminished sixth. That's all I have to say about all this, because this goes into more advanced music harmony, which I don't want to get into. I just wanted to show you that once you learn to read by interval, okay, by adding these half steps, you can then read chromatic intervals. And you can know whether something's major, minor, augmented, or diminished. And when we're trying to write harmony next week, and I'm going to show you harmonic chords and how to write chords, whether something's major or minor becomes essential to writing the chord. Because as you already saw, the major chord here, which occurs it's a major third and then it's a minor third. So you have to know the difference between a major and a minor third. And if you want to write a major chord in any key, anywhere, you have to know where those half steps normally occur. And once you know where those half steps normally occur, then you can analyze the thirds that you're looking at and see whether they're major or minor. And then you can adjust them with the accidentals in order to make them what you want. Now, quickly I want to show you here. This is more of the same, just taken out. Here I'm showing in the key of C. The packets occur between the step 3 and 4, and between 7 and 8, and between 3 and 4. So you can go through here and see, there's no packet there, so that's some kind of a third, that's a major third. There is one packet inside there, that's a minor third. No packets, major third. There's a packet in there, it looks like a second, it must be a minor second. Here's a second with no packet inside, so it's a major second. Here you have the fourth, it has one packet, so it's a perfect fourth. Here we have a fourth with a packet in it, so it is still a perfect fourth. Here's a fifth that has only one packet, it's a perfect fifth. Here we have a fourth, again, and this fourth has only one packet in it, so it's a perfect fourth. Now here's a fifth that has two packets in it. Therefore it is a diminished fifth, and I'd have to sharpen the top note or flatten the bottom note to make it a perfect fifth, natural again. And here we have a sixth. It has one in it, so it's a major sixth. And here we have a seventh, and that seventh has two half steps, so this is a minor seventh. And if I wanted to make this a diminished seventh, I just add one flat to it. But if I wanted to make it a major seventh, I'd have to sharpen one of these, and if I wanted to make it an augmented seventh, I'd have to add two accidentals to it someplace. I'd either have to double sharp something, or sharpen flat something, or whatever. Or double flat something to pull it back into normal, okay? Then in a different key, what happens is you find out where one is, and then that means step 3 and 4 in that key is where the half step occurs. That's all. And between 7 and 8, that half step is still going to occur between those numbers. So now if I go and analyze this, these intervals are now in a different key than those. And what would normally look like a third here would not necessarily be a major or minor third here, because the packets, you see, have moved to new lines just as one has moved to a new line. But the packets will always, the half steps always occur between the 3rd and 4th step of the scale, between the 7th and 8th step of the scale. So if you can figure out where those are, you shouldn't have any problems reading chromatic intervals. So learning what you've learned now and then just adding this one more step will allow you to read in chromaticism. And then that makes the reading even easier once you learn what majors and minors and augmented and diminishes are and how they work. Then you can write chords real easily, or figure out, analyze chords, analyze things, and figure out why they do what they do. Okay, here this shows that scales, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, actually evolved from chords. And it was putting 3 chords together that created the 7-note scale that we have. The way they finally resolved this argument of the half steps in there was to kind of create some piece of music theory to justify their results. So what they did is they said the distance between 1 and 5 is the most perfect interval that we have in the system next to an octave. You know, it's the third overtone here. It's the first new note we get in the overtone series. And it's very perfect. So if I make the 1 of anything a 5 of a new chord and build down, I'll get 3 notes. And if I make the 5 of my root chord, the 1 of a new chord and build up, we get what's called the dominant chord, or the 5 chord. And the 1, 5, 4 chords put together make the major scale. If you took those chords, if I go 1, 3, 5, see that? And then build down, make this 1 the 5, some other note. You get what's called the 4 chord. And then if I build from 5 up, you get what's called the dominant chord. This chord is your root chord, or the tonic chord. This chord, since it's built on the 5th, is the dominant chord, because it's built on the dominant interval. And if I build a chord using 1 and putting it in the position of 5, I'm making it act less dominant than it would normally be as root. Therefore, this is called subdominant. Subdominant. Tonic, dominant, and subdominant. For 1, 4, 5, and 4. Now, if I put all of those together, like that, all those notes, that is, although it doesn't sound like it, sound like a chord, that's really do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. If I took this note here and moved it up an octave, right, it would go right there. And if I took this note here and moved it up an octave, it would go right there. Now if I take this note here and drop it down an octave, it goes right there. You see, I have all the notes that are used in the major scale. I have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And what happens is, the reason that the major scale works along with those chord progressions is because all the notes that are in the major scale came from those chords. If I alter those chords in some way, I will alter the scale. And I can make up new scales, which is what I'm going to show you next week. Starting next week, I'll show you how we can take these 3 simple chords, and by making them major or minor, we can generate all the modes and all the scales that have ever been used in history. All we're doing is taking 1, 3, 5, which we can call the root, or what's also referred to as the tonic, and that gives us 3 notes. And then we can build coming down a 5, 3, 1 chord off of that. This is called the subdominant, because it's taking 1 and making it a 5, less of a position. And if I take 5 and make it the 1 of a new chord, 1, 3, 5, then this note, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one will create do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And any of these notes can be played along with any of these chords. This is called a 1 chord, this is called a 5 chord, and this is called a 4 chord. And they use Roman numerals because they have always, for as far back in history as you can find, thought of chord progressions as numbers. And you want to separate thinking of the numbers for chords as being different than thinking for the numbers as melodies. So for melodies, a melodic position, we always use the Arabic numerals. And for showing the chord number position, we always use the Roman numerals. But it's the same thing. This is a 1 chord, a 5 chord, and a 4 chord. And if you build up 3 notes here, and you build up 3 notes off of this one, and you build up 3 notes off of this one, you'll get all the notes that are used in the scale. That means that if I alter any of these, if I make this a diminished chord, and if I make this a diminished chord, and if I make this a diminished chord, using those rules of figuring out whether it's major or minor that I just told you about, By making all three of these a diminished chord, what I will get is a diminished scale that any of the notes in the diminished scale will always fit these chord progressions or chord patterns. And 1, 1, 4, 5 are the chords that are used to make up songs with a lot. Very, very few variations from that. Well, that's it for this evening. And next week, we're going to launch into harmony from here. So hang on to your hats. Really, when we get into harmony, I'm just going to start blithering off numbers. Oh, let me put this up. By the way, anytime you write a melody, you can do to the melody what we did to harmony, to the rhythm. We used rhyme scheme, we inverted it, we augmented it, we turned it upside down, we turned it right side up. Here's a simple melody, and just if you want to glance at that, that's the same melody written upside down, backwards, making left, right, right, left, and all those changes. Tuesdays all day I do lessons, and Saturday all day I do lessons.
Tuesdays are your bass days.
Yeah,